That is looking good. Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to MotorCity Boat Works. Let's get to work. If you're new to the channel, I want to welcome you, and if you're one of our returning subscribers, welcome back to the Werks. Last episode, I talked about my design and planning considerations for installing a new head, a new bathroom on the pocket trawler behind me. It's a 1986 Albin 27 family cruiser, and I've stripped it down to a bare hull. I tore out the old tiny bathroom and I built a new head space. And now I'm gonna be installing all of the components to make a new head inside my pocket trawler. This episode is gonna be about installing FRP shower panels inside the head of my boat. Today we're making a pattern for the walls inside the shower. There's two walls and they're going to be covered with an FRP panel, basically a fiberglass shower panel. But we've got to make a pattern in order to be able to cut the pieces of FRP and kind of get them set up and dry fitted. This batch of material has to be particularly tight tolerances because we want to be able to caulk everything on the edges and ensure that the shower area is completely waterproof. And we might do a second round of patterns and then begin actually cutting the final panels and make sure that they're good to go. Today it's going to be paper patterns. I think that's going to be easiest because I really need some tight tolerances. This would be a good opportunity to use the door skin method, but I don't have any door skin available, so we'll just do the best we can with good old-fashioned butcher paper. Let's talk about the different ways of making a pattern for, say, replacing a bulkhead or covering a bulkhead. You'll hear folks on YouTube tell you things like, this is the only way, or this is the best way to make a pattern for a marine bulkhead. But I'm here to tell you that it's kind of like having different sorts of tools or different pairs of shoes. You use different techniques on different occasions in different situations depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Some of these methods only work in a flat plane. They don't work for complex curves, and they definitely don't work for three-dimensional bulkheads. This will all be very obvious, and you'll see which techniques are applicable as we go forward working on the shower bulkheads and later the headliner project on my boat. You really need to develop your skill set and be able to do multiple pattern-making techniques for your boat building or boat restoration. Now you'll hear lots of different methods and people referring to different ways to do this. Probably one of the most common is what's called the Tickstick Method. This is where you place a center line along the bulkhead, and from a fixed point, you then use lines with tick marks to map out the contours of the edge of a bulkhead. This is how old-time boat builders, wooden boat builders, this is often how they make their wooden bulkheads. But it has some limitations, especially on a modern fiberglass boat, when you can't always establish a center line or a fixed point. If you've watched some of my other videos, you've seen me use a cardboard or the pink foam method to mock up spaces inside my boat. I like the pink foam method because it allows you to get kind of a dimensional understanding of what a space is going to look like. And the 1/2-inch thick EPS pink foam, well, it's a good representation of what a plywood or Coosa board bulkhead is actually going to be like. Another great technique is called the door skin method, in which you take 1/8-inch strips of Luan plywood or maybe cardboard, and you hot glue gun them together around the edge, kind of outlining the shape of a bulkhead. Now this works great for a void. If you have an open space that you're trying to map out the outer edges of what the bulkhead's gonna look like. But for down and dirty and sometimes precise bulkhead pattern making, well, I like using butcher paper. I like the paper method. Brown paper pattern making has some disadvantages. One of them is that the paper, of course, tears over time or it'll break down, especially if it's in an environment where the temperature and the moisture level is changing. So I like to tape the corners, the edges of the paper with blue painter's tape and kind of reinforce it so they last a little bit longer. Another disadvantage is that the paper method is sometimes not as precise as you would like. It's great for getting into corners and maybe working your way around a radius, but dimensionally over a large span, you can sometimes end up with discrepancies in your measurements. One of the ways to get around this is to understand that when you're doing the paper method, it's always better to have too much material and then trim back for fitting later on. If you're enjoying this episode, would you do me a favor? Hit the like button and maybe leave a comment below. I invite you to subscribe. And if you really want to help out the channel, well, please consider leaving a donation on Patreon. This channel would not be possible without your support. This brings us to the third disadvantage, which is sometimes you have to do multiple fittings and you may even have to do multiple paper patterns. In the case of the two bulkheads in the shower of the Albin 27, I'm using the paper method because it's fast, it's relatively easy, and I've got an interesting situation where I need the two panels to fit together fairly well, but I also need them to have a little bit of room because they may expand thermally over time. So I've got to kind of have enough space, but not too much space, and the panels have got to fit together well. There's also a very difficult and complicated curve under the elbow on the starboard side of the boat, and I've got to figure out how to make all that fit. Now, what are these FRP panels? They come in 4x8 sheets, and they're essentially flexible 1/8 inch fiberglass panels. You can buy them at a big box store. They're often used in clean rooms or utility rooms, sometimes in commercial bathrooms. You can also buy the same material custom order with different patterns or coloring. But for my purposes, a simple white pebbled pattern will work perfectly inside the shower of the boat. The reason I choose the FRP panel instead of a painted wall or something using gel coat is for durability. These panels are easy to keep clean, and once I have a pattern, they're relatively easy to cut and install. An FRP panel at a big box store will run you about $25 to $30 per 4x8 sheet. Once I have the paper patterns, I lay them out on top of the FRP panels. I tape down the corners to pull the patterns tight, and then I start lightly tracing the outline. It seems like an impossible task, and I have to be honest, I have been putting this particular project off for a number of weeks simply because I just had no idea how I was going to get all of these panel pieces to fit together in such a way that they have enough room to expand, but at the same time, they're tight enough and can be waterproof inside the shower of the boat. But it's turned out to be not as bad as I thought. I've got the main one in place here. Let's see. You can see it. Now, I think I still want to sand a little bit more to kind of bring everything into place. This will go back. There's a piece of trim that goes in here, and perhaps a piece of trim across the top. That'll be something that we kind of explore. And then the joint is going to come right here. So let's try and do that next and see what happens. Now, I'm only putting shower panels in the shower area of the head, and this amidships bulkhead, well, it's at least 6 feet tall, and it's at least 60-some inches wide. And what that means is that I've actually got to buy 2 panels to do this one bulkhead. I've got to find a position to seam 2 panels to make up the entire bulkhead. Now, I'll make my notes and sketches and measurements available to the workers, so be sure to check that out. Let me tell you what I learned working with FRP shower panels. Now, when you're cutting these FRP panels, you want to make sure that you put tape on the bottom of your jigsaw, and it helps to have a jigsaw that has a variable speed, so you can set it around speed setting 2 or 3, just enough to cut through the material but not crack it. Use a fine-tooth wood cutting blade for a clean cut. Another lesson I learned is that when you're moving these panels around, especially ones that are cut with any sort of curves or radiuses, make sure that you support the panel
evenly as you carry it about. In a couple instances, I didn't do that, and the panel ended up tearing right at a sharp radius. All this means you have to cut another panel. So when you buy your material, make sure you have enough to take care of any mistakes.
Hey, I just want to take a moment to thank all of our supporters and fans, all of our subscribers, and those of you who are supporting us on Patreon. If you're new to the channel and you're just now checking us out, the single most important thing that you can do is hit that subscribe button. Tell a friend about MotorCity Boat Works. This channel would not be possible without your support. Thank you. So I'm inside the head on the boat, and I'm working on the shower bulkhead. That's the wall that basically makes up the back of the shower. And I'm putting this FRP panel on that wall to make everything waterproof. It'll be easy to clean, low maintenance. But to do this, I've got to size the FRP panel. It actually is in 3 segments, and I've got to size everything so it fits tight but not too tight, because it may expand over time, and also there's trim strips that join everything together. It looks like this. So we're looking into the shower here. You can see this is the bulkhead here. This is a bulkhead here. It's good. This particular panel is bigger. It's wider than 48 inches by 96 inches. It's bigger than a 4x8 sheet. So in order to make this piece right here, well, it's got to be seamed, and there's going to be actually 2 pieces. There'll be one that goes right here, and then there'll be this one that goes right here, which goes up underneath here against the bulkhead. But you can see there's a complex kind of curves here where everything joins up, and this has to go up against there, but of course it's not, because we've got some spots where it's binding up. And in fact, this here we've got some space here. We got to bring this over to get it to work. So I got to mark this to figure out how to get it tighter.
As I dry fit everything, I use a pencil to mark where the panels are binding up, especially on the curves.
I've got to do some sanding where it's binding up in a couple of key places. Before you start marking everything, you have to figure out, well, what exactly is causing everything to be off? In this case, it's this spot right here. If there were a little cutout here, this whole thing would set lower, which would take care of this, which might help take care of a little bit of this, which is binding up. And of course we have sharp corners here that need to be rounded down like that.
I use a palm sander with about 60 or 80 grit sandpaper to go ahead and take off any excess material. It takes multiple go-arounds to remove all the material, but it ensures that I don't take off too much material too soon. You can see it's 3 panels that make up the shower, and the edges, there's a little bit of a gap all the way around so that it can expand if necessary. We'll fill in any gaps with some type of sealant. I think it's looking pretty good. Now, it was at this point that I started thinking about how is the shower pan going to be integrated into the shower panels.
So here's our situation. I'm going to be putting the shower panel liner here on the bulkhead, and I've got the shower pan, which is going to go down in the bottom here, and we've got to figure out how the two are going to meet, how they're going to be married together. The first thing that I'm noticing is that I bought this shower pan a while ago. I needed a particular size, particular dimensions, and I bought this thing. It's a RV shower pan for kind of a do-it-yourself application. And I built the shower pan area inside the head to the size of the shower pan. And now here we are 8 years later, and of course it doesn't fit. And I have no idea why that's the case. Obviously some dimensions have changed somewhere, and they don't know where or why. It's not much, it's just a little bit. Things are a little tighter than they should be. Perhaps it has to do with the
temperature changes and the material's expanding. Cusa board doesn't really expand and contract, but this plastic shower pan definitely might be expanding and contracting a little bit. In any case, what that means is I've got to make a little bit more room inside the shower pan frame so that the shower pan sits in there real easy and nothing's pressing on it. We don't want it to crack or anything over time. All right, I'm down here on my knees. Let's see if we can figure this out. What's going on? You can see, 2, 3, let's check this out. You can see here, this is where it appears to be binding up, right here. It's not much, it's just a little snug. And this, I'm not exactly sure how this happened. I don't remember it being this way 8 years ago, but that doesn't mean anything. And it's entirely possible that I might have gone back and put some fiberglass or something on here that caused it to change up over time. So that's a matter of sanding that down to get a better fit. This thing should drop down in place similar to like it is over here. We've also got, I can't tell, is it binding over here? This is going to be a challenge. And the real question is, what do you do with this? And what do you do over here? Because take a look, you got quite a bit of gap here. Maybe as much as 3/8 of an inch at the end there. All right, I think we've reached a good stopping point. I was hoping that we'd have a moment of completion and you'd get to see the actual panels go up onto the bulkhead. But before I ever get to that step, I've got to figure out how is the shower pan going to be integrated with the wall panels. Does it go over or under? And right now, it looks like nothing is fitting. I've got to sort some things out. I've got to get the shower pan to actually fit in the floor space. And of course, I've got to cut a hole in the shower pan and attach some fittings so everything's ready to go. But don't worry, I'll get on that. And I'll be back again soon with an episode about working on the shower pan for the bathroom on my Albin 27. If you're looking for some motivation to keep you going through the cold winter months, check out my boat motivation playlist. There's some great stories of boat motivation. I know you're gonna love it. We'll see you again next time. Stay motivated.